Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. It is great to have you with us on this Tuesday. Dave Revson and Trent Meacham. I don't want to make too big a deal out of what's happened in the last week for Michigan State, but it is amazing the difference in the narrative as we sit here today than as we sat here, let's say, on Friday.
Well, everybody made too big of a deal a few weeks ago, right? When they're dropping games, when they can't make a shot. And yes, it's just a couple games, but they look just way different as a team. The swagger's back, the intensity is back. I love how Sparty's playing right now.
I'm with you. It was awfully impressive on Saturday, and they followed it up in a nice way last night. Michigan State's performance is our big story as the Spartans took down number 6 Baylor on Saturday, and they followed that up with a win over a solid Oakland team at home, led by as many as 27, ended up taking it by 17, never trailed in the game. All 3 starting guards scored in double figures, paced by Tyson Walker's 14. Spartans back over 500 at 6-5, a team that started the year, remember, ranked 4th nationally. All right, this isn't where anyone expected them to be at 6-5, but I think it's important to note, like, Oakland is pretty good. I mean, they went on the road and beat Xavier. They gave a couple of Big Ten teams competitive games at the beginning of the year. And again, like, you look at this game in combination with what happened against Baylor, and it does feel like they're starting to be more connected than they were and kind of play in the manner that you would expect a Tom Izzo team to play. Really good on the defensive end, pushing the pace. It's a dramatic change from what we were thinking about them a week ago.
It is. And is there any other program that gets as much juice from their alums? You see these celebrities and these Hall of Fame players sitting courtside. And it seems like the Michigan State, the current players, can really feed off that. But I look across the board at this team, whether it's Tyson Walker's been fantastic all year, 25 points again against Baylor, tops 1,000 points in just over 2 years at Michigan State last night. He's been great from start to finish. But now you have A.J. Hoggard playing really well. We talked about X factors last week. I think he's always an X factor for Michigan State. When he's locked in, when he's engaged, when he's making good decisions and living in the paint, he's a load to handle. They're getting production from their big men. Cooper and Sissoko, they go for 14 and 16 last night, 12 and 14 against Baylor. So that's something that they have not had this year. And now they're knocking down some shots, too.
Right.
8 for 12 from 3 against Baylor. Made 9 threes last night. Shoot over 40%. Everything looks nicer, is more fun, it's more beautiful, and you win more games when you're knocking down shots.
I want to dive into a few of the things you talked about there. A.J. Hoggard, first of all, it just felt like the decision-making was there. And I think for Tom Izzo, that has been kind of this constant push and pull with him. I don't think there's been any doubt for the entirety of the time that A.J. Hoggard has been in East Lansing that this is a player who can do what Tom Izzo wants his point guard to do. The challenge for him has been doing it game in and game out. I mean, 7 assists, no turnovers. There have been times where he settled for bad shots in his career. He didn't do that. He's attacking the paint. It just makes such a difference to their team when he makes the right decisions, particularly when they're pushing the pace.
He's a true lightning rod for this team because when he's on his game, they can play with anybody. He gives them a different look as a point guard, 6'3", physical guy. I liken him to Andre Miller a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
Utah guy, Denver Nugget, great pro career. He resembles him a little bit in his appearance, but just a bully of a guard that when he gets in the paint, he can force the contact with the bigs, finish over them, and then he's spraying it out. And now they're knocking down some shots. They're playing with much better pace. It all starts with A.J. Hoggard. Defensively, too. Tom Izzo talked about this in the post-game presser. He talked about A.J. Hoggard, Tyson Walker, Jay Nakins. He thinks those 3 should be the best defending backcourt in the country. And they are really locked in right now. Baylor's backcourt is one of the best in the country. Oakland's got some real sharpshooters. And the job they did on that end of the floor, and then if they can secure the rebounds, not quite the dominant rebounding team that most of Tom Izzo's teams have been, but they've won that battle, +9 against Baylor, +6 again last night against Oakland. Now they're having fun. Now they're playing Michigan State basketball in transition. It starts with A.J. Hoggard, but you have others now coming alongside Tyson Walker and that backcourt playing well, making shots for him.
And then you mentioned the bigs. Neither one of them missed a field goal. I mean, they only took 6 shots between the 2 big guys, but, man, it makes a difference when you have the ability to just dump it in and get a basket. I thought Carson Cooper had one great follow on a rebound. He's active. He's kind of bouncy. I mean, it felt different to me. And then we've talked about when Jackson Kohler comes back, hey, all of a sudden, like if those guys can just give you that in the middle, there's just some sort of a perceived threat, you can make your layups, get some rebounds, it's a different team.
You got to have something from those positions. These guys are playing. There's 40 minutes to be played at that center position. You need something. And when you look at Cooper and Sissoko especially, where they might not be the most dominant of a post-up player, they are quick, they are athletic, they have some length, and if they can use their instincts, their quickness, if they can use that to their advantage, they're both above the rim finishers. They can give them something. They've given them something the last couple games. Now once they enter in Jackson Kohler, hopefully he's back soon, now you have a guy that you can dump the ball down to, that can do some things with his back to the basket. So that's really key to them. And the other thing we haven't talked about is Jaden Akins and Trey Holloman. Those two guys both knocked down 2 threes last night. That gives the complete picture. Tyson Walker's playing well. Hogard is picked it up. He's playing at an all-league level. Your bigs are giving you something. Now on the wings, you're spreading the floor. You're running the floor. They can knock down shots. Trey Holloman in particular has really impressed me this season because he was a non-threat last year. He's shooting at 46% from the three this year. I thought he had that one game of 5 for 5 threes and thought, okay, well, maybe it's just one game. He's hot. He's feeling it. But he's been consistent, knocked down 2 threes the last couple of games. So if he can space the floor, you know he's a defender, another weapon to surround Tyson Walker with. Michigan State, you know, we've talked about it on the show. I had some concerns with their lack of shooting, their lack of post play, but my eyes are open now. They're playing well. And I didn't doubt Tom Izzo, but I was concerned. I'm feeling much better about their future this season.
I love the way Trey Holloman has embraced the challenge, too. I mean, people thought, well, you bring in Jeremy Fears and you got all these guards coming back and maybe you're better off looking somewhere else. And his thought was, no, hey, I want to go out there and prove I can play. A highly touted kid out of the state of Minnesota, a really good football recruit as well. I mean, this is a big-time athlete, and he has shown that he belongs there. Before we spin it ahead for Michigan State, there had to be some moments where Spartan fans were drooling a little bit, thinking about what's next, too. I mean, Xavier Booker in rhythm, hitting that three. I think Tom Izzo, you know, he's wondered about where he fits in. You could see those glimpses of how skilled he is. Cone Carr running transition and throwing down a dunk. Fears getting some good minutes. I understand, like, you have a freshman class that's that highly touted, and maybe there's a little frustration that you're not getting a little bit more out of them right away. But, man, there were glimpses yesterday of what's to come as well.
And they're also not going to have the opportunities that some freshmen are. Jeremy Fears, he's a bit more polished, but he's playing more of a role with all these other guards. But those two guys, Carr and Booker, there's nobody else like them that runs the floor. I mean, it's incredible. Booker's like a deer, how he gets up and down the court. Then he can step out and knock down threes. I don't think he's quite there yet to impact games at the highest level.
Neither does Tom, right? I mean, he's made it clear, right?
Just yet. They've talked about the process. They've talked about him continuing to make progress. The potential is limitless. And so I think that's going to come, hopefully sooner than later. And then Cohen Carr, I mean, he does things like I've never seen anybody do on the court. I mean, he's one of those guys, Dave, where he almost has to windmill it because the rim's right here and he can't just dunk it in. He's got to swing his arm around. So envious of guys like that, but he's just another level athlete. He's fun to watch.
He is incredibly fun, and just when he gets on the break and throws down jams. But again, I think they believe that he's a lot more than that, right? He was a player who was a little bit off the radar early in his high school career, and it wasn't until later that he really began to flourish. And I would also say with Booker, like, you know, Booker had these incredibly high rankings, but they were based on potential. I mean, this is a guy who scored 12 points a game as a junior in high school. It wasn't a guy who was scoring 30, and I think he seems to understand that and understands that, hey, this is the right system for me to be brought along. So it seems like each one of those guys, they're having patience preached to them, and they are listening to the preacher in this case.
It seems like they have a good attitude.
They do. They all seem to have really good attitudes. Okay, so let's spin it forward here for Michigan State and look at what's to come. I mean, this is the schedule. You don't want to get too far ahead. Still a couple games before they get back to Big Ten play, including what should be a tough one against Indiana State. Then at home against Penn State, at Northwestern, at Illinois, as they embark in the full Big Ten schedule. So some thoughts on where this team stands as they enter that stretch. I feel like we've discussed them a ton. It's been the sky is falling. It's been maybe there's hope. Where are you right now as we prepare to turn the page and a couple games from now get into full-fledged Big Ten?
Gosh, it's hard not to look ahead to those Big Ten games,
Yep.
Dave. But where am I now? I feel much, much better about them. Shooting's improved. You have post-production. You have A.J. Hoggard playing at the level that he can, which is so important to them. But I just see an intensity, a swagger. It was there from the opening minutes of that game against Baylor. And if you don't bring that, okay, it's tough to compete. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. Anybody can win. But if you bring that, and it feels like Michigan State has that back, I don't know if Tom Izzo talked about getting out the football pads. I don't know what they did,
right,
but something was different. Gus Johnson said, who are these guys out there? And they look like a different team. So moving forward, you got a couple games. Can you continue to get that rhythm? I feel much, much better about them. They're going to be a tough out here come conference play.
And I will say this, there's nothing on their resume that sets off alarms in any way. I mean, I know that James Madison lost at the beginning of the year. You're like, how did he lose at home to James Madison? James Madison hasn't lost a game yet, right? I mean,
good team.
Yeah, they are a really good team. They're a ranked team. So, I kind of look at this team and say, have they done a lot to help their resume for the NCAA tournament? Baylor was the first game that really helped it. Going on the road, losing Nebraska, I think we all think Nebraska is really good. There are a ton of opportunities here for Michigan State. And again, if you're playing the way they have played these last couple games, you're probably feeling pretty good. I heard you on the call for a couple games over the last week. One of them was Illinois. They played at home against Colgate, a team that is a perennial NCAA tournament team, and really handled them pretty well on Sunday. Interested in where you are on the Illini, because I think when we go down the list after Purdue, Michigan State was supposed to be that next team. Illinois has felt like that next team to this point this year. Are you surprised at where they are?
They're better than I thought they'd be. And the biggest thing that stands out to me calling that game, sitting there courtside, is their length across the board. Every player on their team, 6'6" and above, 215 pounds or so and above. All these guys are long, they're athletic, they can move their feet. So defensively is where I'm really impressed. I mean, Colgate's a good team. They have a really good point guard, another Braden Smith. And they put Terrence Shannon Jr. on him, and he just totally swallowed him up. I mean,
right.
He was a non-factor that game, but their versatility defensively. When, oftentimes you look at, the point guard and the center position. Those two positions might not be able to switch, might not, be a bit more limited because of their height or lack of quickness. Well, Illinois, your point guard, Ty Rodgers, 6'6", very athletic, physical guy. He can guard almost every position. Coleman Hawkins is a guy at the center position, 6'11". He can truly guard all five positions. I've seen him pick up guards 94 feet. I see him bang with big guys in the low post. So defensively, I was very impressed with them. They're so good individually, but they're also connected. These are experienced guys. All their transfers are fifth-year guys. Damask and Justin Harmon. Quincy Guerrier's playing really well. So defensively, they haven't been maybe as good rebounding the last few games. Brad Underwood was really harping on that. They're still, I believe, first in the Big Ten at almost 11, plus 11 in the rebounding margin, but Tennessee kind of punked them a bit. So if they can do that, well, now they're out in transition. Now you have Terrence Shannon Jr. as an All-American playing as well as any guard in the country. There's a lot to like about this team.
You brought up one thing that's really stood out to me, and that is experience. And when you look at last year's team and maybe what they were lacking, they were 293rd in the nation in experience. They are 16th this year. As you said, you bring in a bunch of veteran guys who have played a lot of college basketball, and it's showing here. It just doesn't feel like there's anyone out there who's learning on the job here.
And these guys want to win too, right? They're fourth, fifth-year guys. They want to win. They want to win at the highest level in the Big Ten, in the NCAA tournament. And it's just, they're 23, 24 years old. I mean, these guys have had a lot of experience. They've gone through adversity. They've had success, individual success, now as a team. And last year, I don't think the team was connected. I don't think that the chemistry was there. This year feels very different. I think we've seen it on the court, how they've responded to some losses already. That's proven it to be true. It's going to get tougher come conference play, but this team, because of their length, their athleticism, and All-American and Terrence Shannon Jr., and improved shooting, they're going to be a load for anyone.
Yeah, agree on all accounts. I just feel like this is a team that can be in that discussion here as we head towards March of a team that can make a deep run. You don't want to put the cart before the horse, but against so many nice pieces, and that's what the portal can do for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about that coming up later in the show, and the way the teams have been able to kind of plug some of their holes and address some of the areas that weren't as good a season ago. Signing day is tomorrow in college football, and Nebraska fans got some great news yesterday as Matt Rule secured a massive recruiting win. Five-star QB Dylan Raiola, considered the #2 recruit in the country by 24/7, flipped his commitment from Georgia to the Huskers. Raiola had been committed to the Bulldogs since May. He is the son of former Husker offensive lineman Dominic Raiola, the nephew of current O-line coach Donovan Raiola. The commitment moved the Huskers up to 6th in the Big Ten recruiting rankings. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. Mike Hall, Howard Griffith, Jake Butt, recruiting expert Alan True bring you 4 hours of analysis covering the entire conference, including the 4 schools set to join next season on the Big Ten Live Signing Day special. It's tomorrow at 2 Eastern on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Speaking of those new schools, UCLA women's hoops ranked 2nd in the nation, its highest spot ever. They stayed perfect yesterday by knocking off 13th ranked Ohio State in Columbus. Charisma Osborne led the way with 19 for the Bruins. J.C. Sheldon had 30 for the Buckeyes, whose only losses have come against future Big Ten members. They dropped their season opener to USC. Back to the men and tonight's schedule, which includes a doubleheader here on the Big Ten Network, starting with Indiana and Morehead State. It's followed by Maryland and Nicholls State. Interesting game for Michigan as well. The Wolverines will be in Charlotte to take on Florida, the Jumpman Invitational. Let's start there. Trent, Juwan Howard's back. Solid performance against Eastern Michigan for the Wolverines. This after they topped Iowa on the road. How would you assess where Michigan is? Again, very similar to what we talked about with Michigan State, been a little bit bumpy to this point, but what's your assessment of the Wolverines?
Well, it was really difficult to know what to expect coming into this year. Everybody seemingly in new roles. Juwan Howard being out. They've been up and down to this point. There's a lot to love about Doug McDaniel and his play. And Olivier Kamwa, great pickup in the transfer portal. Those two give them kind of a guard and a big that they can play through that are both very effective. They're off to great starts. I think how do these other players come around them, and how are they defensively? I think are keys for this team. Dave, I got to give you credit. I went through X factors last week, and I talked about Namari Burnett. I think he is critical for them, experienced guy. He's got to knock down shots. But you said Terrace Reed. Okay, went for 19-6 against Iowa, 13-8 last game. So he is a guy that has the ability that really could be an X factor. I mean, his size, but also his feet, his hands, you don't see that too often. So if he can give them those type of numbers consistently, that would elevate this team to another level. Okay, as that you have that point guard that can really make things go and is capable of having big nights. If you have some shooting around him, Burnett, Cheddar has shot the ball well, yeah. But if you can have some interior play alongside Kamwa, because Reed will not be the focal point, this team could be in the top half of the Big Ten. But they've been up and down. Now it'll be interesting with Juwan Howard back, right, and how that helps them moving forward.
What do you make of this game against Florida? It feels to me like these are two teams kind of in a similar spot. They were both NIT teams a season ago and now looking to take that next step.
Exactly. I think it's a great opportunity, right? And it's – I'm not going to call it a free game. It's a great opportunity to get a big win, and it would be disappointing to get a loss, especially right before the holiday break. But I look at it as an opportunity for Michigan. You got your head coach back, too, and I think that's really important. Now the coaching staff has defined roles. I think that really bleeds down to the players. They know who's kind of giving the orders, and as you go through the course of the season, you know, Juwan Howard has been making his way back, step by step. I think it's great that they have their guy back at the helm. Interesting game against the Gators, team that really wants to run. It's going to be interesting to see whether Michigan tries to keep pace with them or whether the Wolverines maybe slow it down a bit. Also, a really good rebounding team. It's an area where Michigan has struggled, so some good tests here for Michigan. Indiana nearly pulled off the huge win over Kansas over the weekend, but now the truth is it's 2 straight losses, right? Auburn and Kansas, both really good teams. This is a different game. Morehead State, although a team picked to win its conference. What are you watching tonight? Well, Indiana, I'm watching, can they make some shots, for one. Under 30% from 3 on the season. They don't even make 4 threes per game. It can be difficult to really get some things going. I think the bench production, only 3 points against Kansas. I thought that group They played so well. Trey Galloway was incredible against Kansas, 28 points. He does it on both ends. He's guarding McCullough. He's guarding DeJuan Harris for Kansas. You just felt like as a team they ran out of steam. So tonight they got North Alabama on Thursday night. I'll be calling that game.
It's big. You're going to be there.
I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be a lot of fun there at the Assembly Hall. But this bench, Caleb Walker, C.J. Gunn, or Caleb Banks, can they give them something? Can they knock down some shots? Can they bring some energy? I think that is crucial for Mike Woodson and his staff. Of course, they want Xavier Johnson back, but they're going to need some other guys to help that starting lineup. Can they give them production? And finally, Dave, rebounding. They haven't been as good as they need to be. They're barely positive on the margin for the season with that front line of Ware and Renew and Peyton Sparks didn't play last game. There's another guy off the bench. Can he give them something? Mbako is playing better. I love to see that. I think that bodes well for them, but their bench production and rebounding needs to improve.
I'm with you on Xavier Johnson, too. I mean, I think I don't want to say people are forgetting, but you lose your point guard. I mean, that's a big deal, and a guy who, of course, you were without for much of last year as well. And Mike Woodson talked about that, hey, this isn't what we expected. You know, nothing but respect for Gabe Cupps, but the plan wasn't to play Gabe Cupps 38 minutes here. But that's kind of the spot that Mike Woodson finds himself in. They do need to be a little bit deeper, and the issue for them is that some of that depth is banged up. So I think it'll be interesting to see when they do get Xavier Johnson back. And Mike Woodson said it's certainly not going to be tonight. It's not going to be anytime really soon. He's not even back out on the court yet. But that makes a huge difference, Trent, when you got your point guard back.
And I think we forget, if you go back 2 years, Xavier Johnson, once he kind of found his rhythm and his flow playing in Mike Woodson's system, the second half of his first year at IU, he was one of the best guards in the conference. He was playing at an all-league level. He had the injury last year, and Jalen Hood-Schifino took off. But he was as good as any point guard we had in this conference. So if he can get back to that form, I think this young front court will only improve. Mackenzie Mbako had some foul trouble against Kansas. That really hurt them as well. But he's playing better. He's defending. He's making shots. He's attacking the basket a little bit. So I only expect his play to improve. He's facing tougher competitions. It's not going to be quite as easy as some of the non-conference teams. But Xavier Johnson, if he's back and playing at his level, this team I believe will compete in the top half of the Big Ten.
You can win a lot of games playing the way they did against Kansas. They nearly won a game against Kansas playing the way they did against Kansas. So I think there's a lot to feel good about there for IU, even with the 2 straight losses. Where are you with Maryland? One of the worst three-point shooting teams in the nation, and they finally got it going against Alcorn State. They hit 14 threes, and you wonder whether they can carry that momentum now into this game with Nicholls State. And again, that has been kind of the missing piece. Is just offensively, they haven't had. You can't shoot the three with the way they want to play. You're in trouble.
It's tough to generate good shots consistently if you're not able to knock them down from the outside. I think, though, I go back 2 games, they got that overtime win against Penn State. Could that really propel them? Because shooting, winning even, it's a mentality. It's a confidence. It's a belief that, okay, I can knock down the shot. It's a belief that when the game's close, we're going to find a way to close this one out. Yeah. And maybe that game helped them get over the hump. Your 2 main guys, Jameer Young, he's at 17 points a game. Julian Reese playing really well this year. Those guys are playing great. Okay, now can you have some others fall in line? I've been talking about Donta Scott. Hasn't quite done it, but I go to the 2 freshmen, Deshaun Harris-Smith, Jamie Kaiser. Those guys are playing better recently. The past 2 games, they're in double figures. They're rebounding. Deshaun Harris-Smith is distributing the ball. So if you can have a couple guys on the wings between your 2 kind of your pillars of your team and your point guard and Young, your big man and Reese, if they're playing well, freshmen, you would hope they would continue to improve throughout the course of the season. And a game tonight, these are really important games. Kevin Willard even spoke about not getting those guys as many minutes as he would have hoped to early on just because of some of their struggles, also the level of competition they were playing. So another game tonight, you don't look past anybody, right. But this is a really important time for those guys to get reps, to get on the court, and to experience some success because they're going to especially need them come conference play.
They're going to need them as soon as Friday. They go on the road to UCLA, yes, and big game there, one of those games that can help you out. I realize UCLA isn't at the level they were a year ago, but you go into Pauley Pavilion, you get a win. That's still a win that's going to resonate in March. So should be interesting tonight. Volleyball, Wisconsin outside hitter Sarah Franklin adding to her accolades last week, being named the National Player of the Year. She's the second Badger ever to win this award, the second in 3 years, joining Dana Retke, who took it back in 2021. Franklin and the Badgers made it to the Final Four, where they were knocked off Thursday by eventual national champ Texas. And Sarah Franklin joins us now. She is today's big interview. Sarah, it's deja vu all over again. I feel like we just had you a few weeks ago, because we did. That was a momentous day where you were named Big Ten Player of the Year. But we thought being named National Player of the Year merited having you on again. It is such an incredible honor. Have you been able to process it? What's your thoughts on what has happened to you here?
Yeah, it's an insane honor, and I think I've had a little more time to process it, and it's kind of cool just to be able to have the girls behind me to be able to get that award. And so I've definitely been able to process it, but I still kind of have to remind myself sometimes that is what I got a couple of days ago. So it's just really cool.
You know, it's pretty cool. You're at home now in Florida, and it's hard not to think about your parents, right? And the role that they had in getting you into volleyball. Your mom was a player at Virginia. Your dad has background in the sport as well. What was your parents' reaction when you told them, I am the National Player of the Year?
Just overjoyed. I mean, what me and my mom kind of had to go through this summer was a little bit harder for her to kind of hear. And my mom and my club coach were also at the banquet. So I got a little video of their reaction, which was just super sweet. And I got to celebrate that with her. And then my dad was just like, that's dope, man.
You know, we had you on earlier. We talked at great length about everything that you've overcome. Just a quick review for those who may not have been watching. You had a blood clot over the spring and summer. It ended up in a diagnosis that required surgery. There was some question for a while as to whether or not you would have to end your volleyball career. When you think about the last 8 months or so, Sarah, kind of culminating in that National Player of the Year moment, take people through like what flashes into your head.
I mean, a lot of things flashed through my head in that point, but just kind of focusing on what I can do next to kind of either get better or just focusing on the girls around me was kind of really important, because I knew that in that sense, whatever was going to happen, and I was going to have to deal with it either way. And thankfully it did come out to the best case scenario.
Have you thought, I guess, maybe my question is, like, subsequent to winning that award, how much have you put yourself back in that spot of my career might be over?
A little bit. I mean, I always knew that was going to be in the back of my mind, knowing that if I do win, you know, a couple accolades, I was going to be able to look back and be like, everything for Sarah at that moment was going to be okay, you know?
Yeah. I mentioned you're back home. Home is Florida for you. And of course, the Final Four was in Florida as well. I know the Final Four didn't go exactly how you wanted it to go. Texas was just fabulous in its run. But what was it like to be home, kind of that full circle moment of being back where it all started for you and playing in the biggest weekend of the sport?
It was awesome. I had so many families, so many friends at that game. My grandma actually bought a box to have just a whole group of Franklin families there. So that was really, really a fun experience to have, and know that I have so many people supporting me. And then a whole bunch of club people that I either used to play with or know was also there texting me and saying, hey, like, you're doing great. So that was really nice just to know I have a little bit of a home court advantage.
You have already announced you're coming back for next year. You had 4 players on your team who earned some sort of All-American mention this year. All 4 can be back next year. How much have you and your teammates talked about what's next year for the Badgers?
Yeah, we're really excited. We know we have a great group coming back, and we know we're going to get back to work and do everything in our power to win that national championship next year.
If you had to pinpoint one area, Sarah, where you feel like your team has to make strides to be the national champs, based on what you saw against Texas and the course of this year, what would that area be?
I think just all around skills, and then confidence, you know, just being in that big stage and stepping up to kind of what we have to do in those situations. But that'll take a lot of work year round, and looking forward to next year.
Well, we are looking forward to it as well. It should be a fabulous year for Wisconsin and really for the entire Big Ten, which appears to be loaded one more time. Sarah Franklin, it has been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit over these past few weeks and talking to you as these accolades have poured in. Congratulations, enjoy the holidays, and looking forward to seeing the Badgers next year.
Thank you so much.
Not quite the level of Saturday and Sunday, but still some intriguing games on the docket in Big Ten hoops this week. Starts tomorrow, Northwestern against Arizona State in Phoenix. Purdue back in action. That one is Thursday on our air, hosting Jacksonville. Got bragging rights on Friday in St. Louis, plus that Terps journey to UCLA we were talking about. And Rutgers takes on a good Mississippi State team. That one is in Newark on Saturday. That is on the Big Ten Network. Let's take these chronologically. Let's start tomorrow, Northwestern and Arizona State. You were there for the Chicago State loss, which was ugly. Northwestern still kind of trying to recover from that. They didn't play great against DePaul, but figured out a way to get a win on the road. What do you make of where they stand in this matchup coming up against Arizona State in what essentially is a road game, even though it's not in Arizona State's on-campus facility?
Big picture for Northwestern. I think offensively they could be better than last year. Ryan Langberg really moves the ball for them. Brooks Barnheiser has elevated his game. Defensively, they're not where they need to be. And Chicago State and Arizona State's going to give some of the same problems that Chicago State did. Really good guard play. And can Northwestern's guards keep them out of the paint? Can your bigs be somewhat effective? We talked about this with Michigan State. They need Matt Nicholson to give them something offensively. But the biggest thing will be checking the ball. And Arizona State's got two former Big Ten guards. Adam Miller, I guess, is eligible now. He had 20
Adam Miller
points
played the other day
in his first game. And Frankie Collins, a Michigan guy, is totally just lighting up the scoreboard, doing a lot of things for Arizona State. So that's going to be the key for them, keeping Arizona State out of the paint. And then Ty Berry, he's a guy that if he's not making shot, it really hurts them offensively. He was playing really well, knocking down shots, only 1 for 13 the last 2 games. So they need to get something from him on the wing.
Yeah, it seemed like he had turned the corner. He was one of the heroes of the Purdue game, had really been shooting the ball better last couple games. Maybe they're just in a slump. I mean, teams
and
have
that happens.
slumps.
It happens to shooters.
Absolutely.
It happens to teams. But you got to right that ship, and this is a good opportunity for them.
Right. And again, the margin for error is not huge with them, and that's a challenge. They don't have a very deep bench right now. They really only have one freshman that they're playing. So we'll see. Again, to your point, defense is not at the level that it was a season ago, but it does seem like there is more offensive upside than there was last year. So every team's a little bit different. Maybe you just play a little bit different. They're, of course, the only team to beat Purdue this year. Boilermakers back to number 1. They get Jacksonville, then they get Eastern Kentucky. I mean, these don't figure on paper to be challenging games. You never say never. But what do you want to see here from Purdue coming off that signature win against Arizona?
Well, I'd like to see some of these bench guys get going. Cam Heide, Miles Colvin, can they get them going a little bit? Because you have some talent sitting on the bench. Talk about margin for error. Purdue has a lot of margin for error, and a lot of that's due to Zach Edey. But with those sophomore guards playing so well, there's going to be nights, though. Can another guy come in and knock down some shots? We've seen Colvin do that this year against Gonzaga. Heide can bring some defense, some athleticism. So who else can they bring in? This will be a great opportunity for that to happen. And also, Dave, I enjoy watching this backcourt play. I mean, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith are so much fun to watch. They play with an edge. They have a confidence and a moxie about them. They're knocking down shots. They're a really fun group to watch. It seems like they enjoy playing together. They're, I think, the team to beat in college basketball. Here's another one for them to come home and for, kind of a Christmas present for the fans before the holidays.
They are so well put together
as
a team. And the difference between a year ago, I mean, the biggest thing to me is they're just shooting the ball so much better from the outside. And that was their challenge a season ago. And the guards were young and kind of maybe ran into that freshman wall a little bit. They didn't have knockdown shooters in the way that maybe they had a few years ago. Sasha Stefanovic, the guy who comes to mind. You didn't have a player like that, but shooting it far better. Lance Jones has been a huge help. They're a really good team.
I would say shooting's always kind of the separator, always a key. And as a former shooter, it's sometimes you go through slumps, but so much of it is mental. And I think for some of those guards, there was a lot on their plate where the shooting can suffer because you're focused on beating pressure, you're focused on playing defense at this new level, and shooting can be the thing that suffers. Now they have the confidence, they have the strength, they've matured, and they're knocking down shots.
Talked about yourself as a shooter. You made a mark on the rivalry between Illinois and Missouri, the bragging rights game. It is a series that Missouri has had the upper hand in recent years, but give us a sense for this game. Friday night in St. Louis, it's always an incredible atmosphere.
These rivalry games, you can throw out the records. Missouri's 7-4. They've lost their last two. They've played well in spots, but it almost doesn't matter. I mean, this is in St. Louis. It's a different environment, a neutral court. It's split 50-50, gold and black on one side, orange and blue on the other side, and there's just a different vibe. Maybe one of the best environments I've ever played in. The energy is unlike any other gym, because every play, a team makes a shot, a referee makes a call, someone's happy and someone's upset.
Right.
So the noise never stops, and it just feels like most years the team that brings it from that's locked in, that's hooked up, that's brings the intensity. It seems like that team. I would bet on that team. And lately, it's been Missouri. They've brought a lot of pressure. They've pushed the pace. They've played their brand of basketball. Illinois has not fared as well in these games in recent years, even when they've been the team that's been expected to win. So we'll see kind of the chip, the edge that the Illini bring into this. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great game.
That would be the case this year. They are the team that's expected to win. Missouri wants to run with Illinois. They are a push the pace kind of team. I feel like that suits the Illini fine, right? I mean, I don't think this is a team that wants to grind it out in the half court. Is it your sense that they'll be willing to play at that pace?
Well, that's where Illinois is at their best, because if there's the biggest weakness right now for Illinois, I think can be half-court offense, generating something. Now they're improving in that regard. So if that game is wide open, that's going to suit Missouri well, but it'll also suit Illinois well. It should be a lot of fun to watch. I think can Missouri spread out Illinois? If they can do that, knock down some shots, now that opens up the game. It's more challenging, but I talked about it earlier, Dave. Those individual defenders, they can all move their feet with their length. They're really tough to get by and score over.
Mizzou really perimeter-oriented. Again, they have had their way. As you said, they've won 4 of the last 5 in this series. We touched on it briefly. Maryland going to UCLA. Last game before the holiday. This is a long cross-country trip, which I think is interesting when you got a little bit getting used to it, but you got time off on the back end of it, and it would seem to me, never having been in that spot like you have been, that the need for focus is heightened in a game like this, because your mind can start to wander about the couple days that come after it.
That's a great point, and I'm guessing most of these players have separate plane flights, tickets to their hometown. They're going to go see their families, and so they're leaving their team after this game in LA, and so that does give a different element to it. UCLA is only 6-4 this year, but their losses: Marquette, Gonzaga, Villanova, Ohio State just this past week, and so they're probably better than their record suggests. Both teams are top 20 defensive teams, so it's going to be a battle. I think the key is Jameer Young as a senior point guard. UCLA's Sebastian Mack, their freshman point guard, is their leading scorer. Can Jameer Young really win that battle on the road? If he's doing that, and then defensively, if they're sound, they got a great chance.
You mentioned 2 teams that, at least philosophically, are fairly similar because they're both really good defensive teams. And I think you could say the same of Rutgers against Mississippi State. I'm really intrigued by this game. I know Rutgers got the win against Seton Hall, but this would be the best win of the non-conference for them. If you haven't watched Mississippi State, they are a really solid team this year. What are you watching here from the Scarlet Knights against a team that is going to lock them up?
Yeah, they're going to have to generate some offense. How about Big Cliff, 25-11 last game? Can they get him going, rolling to the rim, lob dunks? He's a great threat there. Because, Mississippi State, top 10 defense. It's going to be a battle. Rutgers brings it on that end. I love that Milwaukee Mag now back in the lineup. I think he gives them a lot of experience, a lot of confidence, a winning mentality on the court. They brought JaMychal Davis into the starting lineup, freshman. The last 2 games, 23 points, 9 assists. So he's given them something different, which bodes well. Gavin Griffiths, another freshman that can score the ball. So maybe some of these young guys stepping up, giving them a boost offensively is what they need. But they're going to have to do what they do. Steve Peichel team, rebound, defend. If they do that, this should be a really good game.
Freshman guards on Rutgers and freshman guard for Mississippi State is fabulous. Josh Hubbard is a walking bucket. He is really good, like 5'10", and he can really score. So that should be a fun game. Hot off the presses, literally released during the show. Mike DeCourcy's first bracket forecast of the year. He has 8 Big Ten teams in. That is tied for the most of any conference. It includes Purdue as a 1 seed, Illinois at 3, Wisconsin and Ohio State 4 seeds, Northwestern, Nebraska, Indiana, Michigan State all in the bracket as well, though it is a little more tenuous with those last 4. As we continue here on Big Ten Today and wrap things up with Trent Meacham, I mentioned signing day is tomorrow for college football, but the truth of the matter is that a lot of the attention here in these last couple of weeks has been paid to the transfer portal, and I think the same is beginning to be true in basketball as well. You see the impact that transfer portal players have made. So who are the guys who have stood out to you early on in this season in terms of the transfers trend?
Well, first I'd say, Dave, coaches are now getting guys that have played college basketball before. They're not 17, 18 years old. Some of these guys are 22, 23, 24 years old. They've been through adversity. They've had success. They want to win maybe at a higher level, or they need a change of scenery. So that is great. It's a great way for a coach to change the direction of their program pretty quickly. Now, we've seen a lot of guys this year come in, whether it's Khalil Ware on Indiana, bring them something. He's trying to replace TJD, tough to do, but he's off to a really good start. And A.J. Storr for Wisconsin. And look at this guy who's the perfect pickup for them. An above-the-rim finisher, had 20 points against Michigan State in that big win. Gives them a different element, something they've lacked in recent years. So you get a guy like that who had success in the Big East at St. John's. Lance Jones at Purdue is not going to put up the biggest numbers, but you don't see Braden Smith play like he's playing right now. And look, I love Braden Smith. I think Robbie Hummel's talked about him being an All-American, but you don't see him doing this if not for Lance Jones, picking up the best opposing player on the defensive side of the ball, giving Smith and Lawyer a little bit of a reprieve as another ball handler, some quickness on the perimeter. He was huge for them. I love it, and I know we're on the same page here. Rink Mast for Nebraska.
Yeah.
The last 2 games, 8, 14, and 6 assists against Michigan State, 19, 12, and 3 against Kansas State. He's a point center, and I really like how Nebraska plays. And it all really starts with him. We think about Tominaga coming off screens, cutting to the basket, but he's a guy that give him the ball, and he brings experience, and he brings skill and size. So I love him. And then there's more, but I'm going to go to Jamison Battle now, too. Great backcourt, sophomore backcourt for the Buckeyes. You have your center position is locked down with Zed Key and Felix Akpara. And now you have an experienced player, a proven scorer, knocking down shots, shooting almost 45% from field, 40 from 3, 90 from the line. He's playing great. These transfers are making an immediate impact on quality, high-caliber teams.
Right, and that's what's so amazing about the way that the portal changes things is you can look at your deficiencies and say, what do we need? And then you plug in the right guy. And as you said, it has really worked out. A.J. Storr would be a prime example of Wisconsin. This is exactly what they needed. Well, what's interesting, though, it is much tougher for freshmen to have an impact than transfers. We see some of the freshmen here who have stood out. These are the leaders in various statistical categories. What's different now, Trent, in terms of these young players trying to make an impact?
It's always hard for an 18-year-old, right, to compete with these guys at the college level. But now we have a lot of fifth-year seniors. I talked earlier about Illinois' transfers, Damask, Justin Harmon, Quincy Guerrier. These are fifth-year guys. So now, as an 18-year-old, you're trying to compete against 22, 23-year-olds, guys that have been through college basketball. That makes it a lot tougher. We're maybe seeing some fewer freshmen kind of make that leap this year. But those guys are playing well. And what I'm excited about is seeing them improve over the course of the season. Now they've taken some lumps. They know what it takes to win. They've faced some different opponents, and I think we're going to see some guys step it up. Another guy not on that list, John Blackwell for Wisconsin. I don't know if anybody thought about him, but almost 10 points a game. He had 17 against Arizona, shooting over 50% from the 3. So there's some guys that we didn't think about. Owen Freeman, the numbers he's putting up at Iowa, really good pickup. Nobody was talking about him. Some of these guys are going to be terrific 4-year players. We're going to see a lot of them over the coming seasons.
Yeah, Owen Freeman's been fabulous. He's a Big Ten Freshman of the Week 4 times already. He's, again, a guy who can give you double-doubles, works really hard on the glass, really nice post moves inside. But it is interesting where you feel like, I don't want to say there's a shift, but in some ways it's a luxury. And we were talking about Michigan State. There's just not as much pressure on these guys. You just hope players are patient.
And Michigan State's best player, transfer. Tyson Walker
Yep.
hasn't gone to the transfer portal in recent years, but it's a way to really help your team quickly.
And he wasn't great right out of the gate
No,
his first year, but these last 2 years now, he's been fabulous. Don't forget, Hoops tonight, signing day tomorrow. See you for Big Ten Today tomorrow as well.